Welcome, everybody, to Tiki Tuesday Talks. Before we get into our regularly scheduled program, I just got to show off my pork roll gear here that I got for my birthday. New Jersey, you can't get pork roll anywhere else. You know? You know. Kevin doesn't know. We're going to have to show him what's up.
I don't know. I need someone to
It's a tangy pork product. You know these kind of, I mean, it's delicious. You don't know what's in it.
What you get when y'all don't have a Waffle House, you make a big deal out of your fried bologna sandwich. That's what they do in New Jersey.
Wait, is it a fried bologna sandwich? Is that what it is?
It's not bologna, but it's in the family, maybe, if you will.
Kevin, I said what I said. It's fucking bologna.
Mystery.
No way. That's outrageous. I'm taking you out, Diva. I'm sorry, we can't have you on the show.
Oh, wow.
All right.
That's the power.
That's pretty good, right?
Wow.
That's what I do. I don't like what you're saying. You're out.
Yeah.
That's it. Aaron, you're out of here.
Bye.
Bye. You got the hook. You got the hook.
That's a lot of
If I did it was that easy, I would have exposed the life of pork roll a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe I never thought of this earlier. You know, just hook people. Kevin, we got you on. I've been chasing you for a year. Here you are. We're excited to get some nuggets of wisdom from you. What's going on? Where are you at?
I do my best to do it. Hey guys, it's my name's Kevin Diedrich, based out of San Francisco. I have a bar called Pacific Cocktail Haven and the newly opened Kona Street Market, which is Kona's neon head right behind me. I'd be at PCH, but as some of you may know, PCH had a giant fire back in February, and we're currently just trying to figure out things over there. But luckily, one burns down and another one opens, all within 3 days of each other, which is also a very fun time. 2020 was a lot of fun. 2021 started off with a bang. But if some of you don't know me and my bar PCH, I've been in hospitality and bartending for over 20 plus years. Started out working in nightclubs back home in DC. I like to say DC. If I tell people I'm from Virginia, they automatically think I'm from the South. So I have to say Northern Virginia, and no one knows where Northern Virginia is as well. So I have to say DC, and then people are like, that makes sense. And then the people that are from DC will be like, wait, where in DC you're from? And you're like, Fairfax. And they're like, no, you're not from DC. So it's a weird conversation to have from people, but I hail from the East Coast. But started my way bartending through nightclubs and working at high-end hotels. Started with the Ritz-Carlton over there and nightclubs. And as many people did back in the day, I lied on my resume to get my first job. So nice. I told a friend that to say he was my bar manager, and I used him as a reference. And I said I bartended for 5 years, and they bought it. So here I am, about 20 plus years later, still working in the industry and bartending. I cut my chops up in New York City at PDT and Clover Club. Did San Francisco 2 times. I went from DC to San Francisco to DC to New York City to San Francisco. Eventually trying to get to Hawaii is the end goal. But now, as my wife likes to say, we're stuck in San Francisco and she's going to die here. In a jokingly way that I keep telling her there's a couple more years left and we'll leave, and I keep opening things. And that's a bit the long and short. I mean, PCH has been about for 5 years. We've been very, very lucky and fortunate to open and receive the attention and accolades that we've received. I tell the team and me as well. It's always nice to have people say nice things about you. But at the end of the day, it's just about relationships and cocktails for us. And that's kind of how we've driven PCH and how we continue to drive the new bars and everything. And I guess that's the 5-minute quick about
right on, man. Yeah, I will say one of the best bars in the game for sure, no doubt about it. So congrats on all that. We'll get more into that. And I have a funny anecdote as well from last night. A buddy of mine started working for a restaurant I won't name in Resorts World, which just opened in Vegas. You know, went there Friday, Saturday, Sunday in as a waiter. He's another gig. And on Sunday, he's like, I'm out of here because it was totally a mess. And we were like, you could totally put on the resume, opened XYZ spot, Resorts World. And we were like, that's the New York move. Oh, yeah. Spent 2 years as opening lead, blah, 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 doing XYZ when You were there for 3 days.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. No one checks references or
Nobody's
anything anymore.
got time to check.
Everyone's just like, oh,
seems like an honest dude. I get it.
yeah, I liked his personality. Let's just hire him. And you're like, you know nothing about him and stuff. So that's just where we are in this industry right now. We're all shorthanded and we're grabbing at straws and bartenders to try and make it work. So
right on, for sure. Cleary, what's going on, man?
Not much. Getting myself back to work full time again, which is great.
Awesome.
A little bit of a shift pandemic wise. I was working full time at a speakeasy cocktail bar called the Drifter here in Chicago.
Yeah. And
it's a lot of fun, great spot, like high volume little cocktail joint with like burlesque and like variety acts. And sadly, because of the pandemic, they weren't really able to reopen until I guess roughly about 2 months ago. So when the opportunity came to go back to work, I took employment full time at Clark Street Ale House, which a completely different animal. It's more of a service industry type bar. Really great craft beer program. Right now, we're almost to the point of like where we were at pre-pandemic, of having over 100 different craft beers between drafts, bottles, and cans. We have a crazy good Scotch program, whiskey program, but mostly it's just a really fun environment. It's a great place to our neighbors, that work at the different restaurants and bars nearby us in the River North neighborhood of Chicago, which, if anybody's not familiar, that's it's definitely a lot of hotels, tourists, that kind of thing. It can be a lot. So we're kind of like a safe space for a lot of people when they get done with a shift, or nice. If folks have like a great set of guests, they'll send them our way because they know that they'll be in good hands with us. So it's been a lot of fun. It's definitely it's rough. We're open until 4 a.m. every day of the week, with the exception of Saturday, where we get a bonus hour, which I still fully don't understand the bonus hour in Chicago. But if you have a 2 a.m. license, you can stay home until 3. If you have a 4 a.m. license, you can stay home until 5. And people fully utilize it. So
wow,
there you go.
That's insane. I mean, that's but whose bonus is that? It's not the bonus for the staff. I always say nothing good happens after 2 a.m. and I have a lot of proof on that. But 5 a.m. is a stretch.
Say, I've been on both sides of it. So when I was working at the Drifter, I would go over to Clark Street post shift, and it was so great to be able to like go from living in Denver, Colorado, where your shift is over at 2 a.m. Where do you go when your shift is done? You just go home, or you go over to somebody's house and drink beers and stay up late anyway. But this is nice to be able to sit down and unwind post shift with your coworkers and kind of just take a load off. So thankfully, by the time it gets late at night, there may be like some folks that are a little rowdy and having too much fun, but like for the most part, people kind of like keep themselves put together, and it's fun, but like
it's all
nothing's
class
ever out of control.
It's all class.
That's like the bars that open here at like 6 a.m. It's like I feel like that's the reverse. Like the people coming in at 6 a.m. to have a drink. I'm like, you're like, do you realize 6 a.m.?
Oh yeah, we got them in Baltimore. They have Boilermakers right before they go into shift, and that's traditional.
Yeah.
I understand. Maybe if your bar was like located right next to the ER or the hotel or like the hospital, like you'd be getting a lot of business. But some bars are not close to any of those.
No, they're in the middle of like nowhere, and it's like a full parking lot at 6:30, and I'm just like, what is going on?
Yeah, they know.
Anyway,
they know.
Steve, Aaron, how you guys doing? What's happening?
Oh, sorry. Hello.
Yeah, we're deep in it already. It's great to see your faces. We'll see all you guys in a little bit. We're going to talk to Mr. Diedrich here. And, catch up with you in a little.
Yeah, can't wait.
All right.
Oh, it's me and you, Pete.
It's you and me, man. We're gonna have to keep them entertained. All right.
Do our best.
We'll do our best. So, as you mentioned your background already, I won't go too deep. Topic: translating heritage into a cocktail. Appleton and Ray sponsoring this one. As usual, guys, chat box and questions. Please hit us up, either Facebook, Zavi, wherever you may be. Share the event, presentation 30 to 40, cocktail session woven into that. We'll bring Chris back for 5 questions. You gave a bunch of your background, but just a little note here. Tales of the Cocktail 2020, American Bartender of the Year. Congrats on that. And we know where you're at the helm at, and we know about Kona. So I kept it short and sweet here. Obviously, great background. Now we know you lied on that resume. So maybe we'll look into that. But yeah, tell us a little more. Maybe you want to give a little more context beyond that for this topic.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, when we had talked as the last year, you trying to convince me to do this, and me being super busy, going back and forth a lot of things. I'm very thankful to be able to spend some time with you and talk about a subject that I feel very strongly about. I mean, PCH is kind of like my love letter to my heritage and the journey and the discovery of my Filipino background. A lot of people don't know that my last name is Diedrich, which is Polish German. No affiliation to any Filipino last name. So my brother's last name is Park, so you can kind of connect the dots there that we're both adopted. So I grew up, I was in an orphanage for about 3 years before I got adopted by my 2 parents who raised me back home in Northern Virginia, DC. So my mom's from Buffalo, New York. My dad grew up on a little farm in Minnesota, and they're both white. So that's where my last name came from. But ethnically, I'm Filipino, and it's always been kind of a journey of discovering my roots and discovering the flavors and everything. And PCH was kind of that love letter to the Pacific Islands. So PCH for short is Pacific Cocktail Haven. So I wanted it to accentuate and highlight Pacific Island ingredients. And I use a lot of those Filipino ingredients like calamansi, ube, pandan, almost pandan too much, the sort that my team says that we should rename the bar Pandan Cocktail Haven.
Who do you think uses more pandan, you or Nico de Soto? That's my question.
I give a lot of credit to Nico, because Nico's and the East Coast and London has probably been using pandan more than my journey of discovering it. So I definitely give Nico the reins in terms of doing more with pandan and creating that kind of trend. You know, I read a lot about it, and my journey kind of paralleled his, but he definitely. I'll give it to Nico. Nico can have pandan if I can just have it.
He doesn't need it.
He doesn't
need any ego stroking. He's fine.
Yeah,
but it is.
I mean, he's got bars all across the world.
Flavor. Yeah.
But that's kind of where PCH comes from. Is that, and I wanted to talk about heritage in the cocktails because it's something that I'd like to see more of. We talk about drink trends, and I don't like to talk about, the next new gadget, the next new spirit and stuff. It's something that I'd like to see is more heritage in the cocktails, and kind of like what I've been experiencing in terms of me trying to find my journey and connecting that into a cocktail. I think cocktails are just like food in terms of you relating things and being able to create an experience for somebody and connecting something. And it's a lot more personal if you're putting your personal touch into a glass and there's a journey in there and there's a story behind that instead of just whipping up a cocktail. So that's kind of what we got into in terms of, I wanted to talk about heritage and how you put it in the glass, how my journey went, and how to use these ingredients that like calamansi, pandan, that are all becoming pretty heavy into the trends. You see pandan a lot on the West Coast nowadays, and a lot of people using frozen, and a lot of people are starting to use calamansi. So I felt very strongly that we should talk about these ingredients and journey and make a cocktail with it. So what do you think?
Yeah, that's great. I would love two things. One is that, in my journey in selling cachaça to people, which is, kind of an interesting spirit that is relatively unknown to a lot of the people, even who are more familiar with what's going on in cocktails. I'm always amazed at the idea that, like, more people don't think that way about their cocktails, right? This is like, to me, it's like, this is your curation. You know, of course, if you're a cocktail bar, but even if you're a restaurant, right? Like, how deeply do you think about the food menu and how it reads and what's, you know, the variety of it and all that? And then you look at a cocktail menu and it's like 8 classics that everyone knows and everyone has, and there's nothing unique about it. So that's always been such a strange thing for me, just traveling around. And I think it's evolving, but it's been a very slow evolution to start thinking about like, hey, why don't I put my own stamp on it? Whether it be culture within, which I think is a great one, or unique takes, or whatever it is. You know, I think that's a great conversation to have, and really progresses guest experience, right? When you really keep that in mind.
What exposes the culture that you're passionate about. I mean, we've seen so many things done with Japanese cocktails, Japanese bartenders, Japanese flavors, and I love it. I mean, I adhere to it, definitely Japanese cuisine a lot more than other cuisines. My wife is Japanese Hawaiian, and I like those subtleties. But there's so much Japanese influence. You know, if I have to go into see another Japanese cocktail bar and another Japanese book coming out, it's I think it's a bit of a saturated, where I would love to see more of our culture, other cultures coming out and giving that expression and pushing those flavors forward, so we know how and we can express them and we can taste them, because it's about sharing, and it's about sharing our stories.
Yeah, totally. I don't know if you're going to get into this a bit later, but I'm really curious about your journey. Like, when did you start really getting curious about your Filipino background? How did you go about learning more about food and drink and flavors and all that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's always been, you know, it's a journey, and you figure out things. I think the kind of the epiphany and the big thing was working with Chef Francis Ang, who has a Filipino pop-up called Pinoy Heritage. He's opening his brick and mortar called Abaca.
Oh, nice, cool.
One of the cocktails I'm making today that I consult on his menu. But I met him, and he has a Filipino background. He's Filipino. And he started introducing a lot of these flavors to me while I was in San Francisco. And there was something that just gravitated to me. There was the calamansi, there was the pandan, the ube. And I just started playing around with it. I had no idea how to use these flavors. I didn't know any background of it. Again, I grew up with almost, I call it, my diet was like meat and potatoes, you know?
Yeah, sure.
Like it was like a corn husker diet. I mean, I grew up essentially eating like my dad grew up in a farm, which is like, you know, like eating steak every night, potatoes, mac and cheese. So I was never really introduced to these flavors until maybe about 5-6 years ago. So that was where it kind of got to me, and I started eating more Filipino food. And as anyone in my position or as a bartender, you want to go down that rabbit hole. So I definitely committed 120% into figuring out these flavors, eating more Filipino food, trying to figure out how to use these ingredients, ube, pandan, calamansi. Calamansi took me maybe 18 months to wrap my head around, because you know, you taste it and you're like, calamansi, a lot of people know about it. It's a Filipino lime. It's essentially like this big. So it's really, really tiny. It's really hard to juice these in a hand press, which is why you just buy puree. You can imagine what this yields. This yields like a bar spoon of calamansi juice. Can you imagine?
You just have a calamansi juicing position, and that's all they do for 10 hours.
Yeah. They're like, one case of calamansi yields like 1 ounce, and you're like,
yeah.
But again, it took me forever to wrap my head, because I'd never tasted these flavors before. So that was kind of the journey of like going back over and over, reading about it, reading how kitchens and pastry chefs use it. And that was the big thing with pandan and ube too, was going down that rabbit hole. And I encourage anybody that's trying to wrap their head around a flavor is to go see how a pastry chef is using it, or how a kitchen's using it. And that was like the big epiphany for me. Was like, I was like, pandan, how is pastry chef using pandan? They're steaming rice with it. There's a rice component to how pandan is used, and then you kind of plug it into other spirits. I say like the best way to experiment with a flavor that you're not familiar with is to throw it into like a daiquiri. You know, since we're talking about tiki drinks and rum drinks, is like, I didn't know pandan, so I made a pandan syrup, threw it, replaced the sugar and did rum, lime, and pandan, and saw how it interacted with it.
Right.
And you do that with other base spirits. Like you don't know how to use sake, throw sake into a daiquiri and see what the texture comes out and the flavors.
Right.
So that's kind of where it's been. It's been quite a journey, and as journeys are, they never end. You just continue doing them.
Yeah. One other random aside. My first experience with calamansi was actually at a spot called Spice Market in New York, which was a John George restaurant. Really delicious. And they had a really good drink. It was a calamansi caipirinha that they used agua in. And it was delicious. It was such a cool kind of twist on citrus. And two, it was so good with that food as well, right? Like it really just played well into that. So that was kind of the first time. And then I've seen it, to your point, I've been seeing it more and more, which is really cool.
It's cool. I mean, you think about the juice that's accessible to us. We're all using lemon, lime, orange, grapefruit. And there's a vast array of tropical citrus that none of us use.
Yeah.
And I think calamansi's, again, it's like when you think about it, it's a breed between a lime and an orange. So it's so easy to kind of plug that profile into anything else. Like you can throw it into an airmail. You can throw it into anything else that requires lime or orange and see how it interacts. And that's just like, we're never creating anything original anymore. We're just doing riffs off of everything at this point. But it's what we can do with those flavors to push that culture forward.
Cool. Yeah, let's make that drink. I'll throw it up here for people first.
Yeah. So this is really neat. So this is a cocktail that I did for Chef Francis Ang's restaurant Abaca that's opening up in August. So it's, again, trying to hold true to the Filipino flavors and the Filipino restaurant and ingredients. So I wanted to do a daiquiri. Rum is quite popular with the Philippines, along with, surprisingly, gin. But I decided to do rum, obviously, because this is sponsored by Appleton and Ray Nephew. And surprise, surprise, I actually split the base and put it in this drink. Not purposely, just by coincidence. It happened that way.
Wow.
So again, I was like, this is fate. This is fate that
it really was. It really was.
Appleton, yeah. So again, I'm splitting the base with this. So just 1 ounce of the Appleton. It used to be the Special Reserve. Now it's the Family Reserve. And then we've got the Ray Nephew, 1 ounce of the Ray Nephew that I infused with pandan and then milk washed it. So kind of a cool technique that Dave Arnold has kind of perfected and we all like to use. I'm not taking credit for this by no means. Dave Arnold is a brilliant genius, and he wrote an awesome book that we all use as a resource. So milk washing that pandan, so it's essentially taking the pandan leaf, sous-videing it for about 30 minutes. I always like to treat pandan as like a tea leaf. So the longer you steep it, the more bitter elements you get out of there. So I try not to steep it for too long. So a little bit of honey syrup, or we make our honey syrup 2 to 1. And if you know anything about calamansi, the thing that I learned is calamansi needs fatness, like really, really fatty things to kind of balance out that chalky and that super bracing acid. So I have the 2 to 1 honey in there, about 3/4 of grapefruit, ½ ounce of fresh calamansi juice that I freshly pressed this morning. Kidding, I didn't. I did not do that. And then about 1/4 ounce of maraschino. So kind of holding true to what a daiquiri was. Again, like we talked about, how did I get to this point? Was it literally just replacing the lime juice with the calamansi, but adding a little bit of honey syrup to rich it out. And then that milk washed pandan Ray and Nephew, which gives a great little milk texture, which is, again, putting texture into this cocktail and fattiness that calamansi needs. So I'm just going to ice this down and give it a shake.
Yeah, buddy.
Smile. All right.
This is probably one of the few where anybody's made a drink in an actual bar. We've seen an incredible amount of seated at your kitchen counter cocktail making.
Oh no, we're lucky today. I mean, again, it's like I said, we didn't have PCH to do it, but we still we have Konas here.
There you go.
So just shaking.
Look at that.
Straining it out there, and then I garnish it.
Oh, look at that glassware. Like that.
Oh yeah, I like our glassware. So this is one of my
that's beautiful.
Buying new glassware for PCH we're trying to reopen hopefully soon. But this is
Awesome.
a nice, sexy one from Japan. But garnished with a grapefruit twist, citrusy.
Man,
I don't expect
put
anyone
one in
else
the
to have
mail
one,
for me.
but there it is. Milk
Very cool.
washed, Pandan infused Ray and Nephew. I like to split the base on that just because obviously 2 ounces of Ray and Nephew in a daiquiri might get you some in trouble. And I definitely don't want to be responsible for that trouble.
Correct. Makes sense. Makes sense. Awesome, man. I'll throw it back up here for you.
Yeah,
Cool.
so delicious. Like you get that texture, you get that nice bright acid brightness from the calamansi, and then you've got the kind of that split base, the Ray and Nephew and the Appleton in there, giving it the backbone to that cocktail.
Right on. Let's maybe let's walk through. Oh, here you go. Here's your recipe. You want to talk
So
this a little more detail?
yeah, so pretty easy. I mean, you could almost plug and play this to anything. Mr. Potato Head it with another spirit. This recipe that we do for the Pandan infusion is the same recipe that we use for a cocktail we have at Kona's called the Borke Old Fashioned with this Pandan infused gin. So if you're looking to make a Pandan spirit or infusion, you can literally do this with this or replace it with another ingredient of same profile of Pandan. Again, I can't reiterate enough that I use Pandan more like a tea and a tea leaf than like a botanical, like basil or anything of that sort, just because of the profile of it. But again, it's just one really long Pandan leaf. I brought some of it here.
Oh,
If you
yeah.
don't know Pandan, it's like this super long leaf.
Where do you get yours?
So we're lucky here in San Francisco to have a huge influx of Filipino food and cuisine. So I buy this from a produce company that comes fresh. You can get it fresh. I actually saw it really randomly in Houston, of all places, at H Mart, fresh Pandan. But you can buy it frozen as well. Just thaw it out. I honestly prefer fresh, just because frozen can get off a little bit of a kind of a dirty garbage flavor, which is really weird. I try not to say that in a bad way. But that's just the flavor profile I get off. Of like
Dirty garbage, but in an all right way.
Dirty garbage, but in a good way. But like fresh Pandan gives off that really like nutty marzipan, buttery popcorn, which is what you're trying to get from the Pandan. A little bit of vanilla too. So I just use one really long leaf.
To describe it. That's a good way to describe it. I've never really kind of nailed on how to do it, but I think that buttery popcorn idea. Totally.
It's like it's weird trying to explain it to people because people like we use it a lot over here, but trying to explain it to people are like, what is that? And you're like, buttery popcorn, and they're like, yeah, that's what it is. Like nutty marzipan, buttery popcorn. Don't use the term what I just said, which is like dirty garbage.
Don't use that. That's not a good sales technique.
Yeah. Do you smell the dirty garbage? No, it's not. It's not the bar. It's the cocktail.
But it really, I mean, I find this as well. Again, I'll kind of reference what my world, but it's connecting context for people that makes sense to them, right? That's how you help people understand flavors that may be somewhat familiar but different. I think once you put in a bit of context, it's just so much easier to kind of take them along for the ride.
Yeah, and it's like I mean, again, we're kind of fortunate, and we have a heavy clientele that is Asian and Pacific Asian and Filipino. So a lot of the flavors are very recognizable to them, which is awesome and brilliant. And it's such a great experience to share something because it brings them back to their childhood. And I think that's what we have to do, and what we do in the bar industry is we create experiences and we cultivate relationships. And what's in this glass is important, but at the end of the day, it's about the people and our bar and our hospitality and the people that come through. Do you think your approach would be different if you were in, say, Northern Virginia, opening a bar? Would you do the same thing, or would you approach it in a slightly different way? Definitely different. I mean, I thought long and hard about expanding the PCH brand and having roots on the East Coast. I thought of it, but I think PCH, and it's hard because you talk to a lot of different people. I think a lot of it is a place. And it's the people that are in that bar. It would be really hard for me to create the same ambiance and that same experience that we have in San Francisco than we do it somewhere else. As much as I battle with the idea of branding PCH and expanding it, I think the same idea is that I have trouble with is the expansion of it and losing the soul of what PCH was and what we think about it. Plus, I don't think calling it Atlantic Cocktail Haven. Is there anything in the Atlantic that is very inspiring for anybody on the East Coast? To
Great Lakes
Bay?
Cocktail Haven.
Yeah. Is there anything out of the dirty Potomac River and the Chesapeake
Oh, there you
Bay
go.
that can inspire us? I don't know, but
Yeah.
it'd be different, and it'd be a different approach. I think I'm always open to conversation if anyone can sway me other ways. But
yeah, no, that's such an interesting challenge. That a bar is so much more than just the drinks and the look of it. It's the setup, where it is, the clientele, the staff. And I think translating that is extremely difficult, as we've seen, unfortunately, because you understand the mindset of wanting to get it to more people, right? I think your place is amazing and you want to get it to more people, but how do you do that in a way that doesn't lose what makes it so great,
Yeah. When I think about it, I feel more, there's like a disappointment for me. If I can't, I'd feel like I'm letting down our guests if I try and expand it and create PCH somewhere else, because they won't have the same experience they have in San Francisco if it was somewhere else. Like the cocktails could be all the same, but again, this what's in here isn't the end all be all of your experience. It's the music, it's the ambiance, the lighting, it's the people. So that's, I think that what drives me and what is hard for me is the disappointment of not being able to deliver it to everybody.
Yeah, heard. Cool. Should we get into these ingredients a little bit more here?
Yeah. Let's see. So there's pandan. Again, some people like to call it Strufan. I wasn't sure if I was going to have any fresh, so I put a picture up there. But again, it grows like a bush, really, really long. I think one of the cool things that I discovered about it is a lot of people like to wrap rice with pandan and steam it. And I had a cocktail on PCH called the Kung Fu Pandan. Surprise, there's a pun there for you. Outside of the Jean-Claude Pandan, that's also on the menu at PCH.
There you go.
See what I did there. Yeah.
Yeah. I see
that. But the Kung Fu Pandan is really cool because it's the rice component I used when I read about it, about people wrapping rice and steaming it. Was I made a cocktail completely based on rice using the Kokore Japanese whiskey as rice-based, using sake, which is also rice-based, salted pandan syrup, citrus, and a little bit of candy cap dust. And that was, again, when we talk about inspiration or trying to figure out how to use a flavor, that was a really cool translation into that, was seeing what a pastry chef or a cook was doing by steaming rice with pandan around it and then making a cocktail around that flavor. But again, like pandan, long leaf, use it like tea. Used it several different ways. We have the kind of famous Leeward Negroni that we have on the menu at PCH, which is a pandan cordial. So use it that way. We make salted pandan. We do an infusion. It's such a versatile ingredient that can be used a lot. I think it's just wrapping your head on how to use it, which is the big one.
And where is it? Is it only imported? It's grown only in Asia, only on the island? Like, where does it come from? Where's it from?
They say generally Southeast Asia.
Yeah,
you
broadly.
see a lot in like Vietnamese cooking and desserts and pastries.
Mm-hmm.
I saw, when I was doing a lot of research, I saw a strong influence in Vietnamese cooking and Filipino cooking. That's pandan specifically, and I think it's neat that it can bridge a lot of different cultures and kind of pull relations together in terms of that it's not just isolated just in Filipino cuisine, but it's known as a Southeast Asian ingredient. But it grows fresh here. I always joke around that maybe I should get into the pandan business out here and grow a farm.
Oh, so it
pandan.
does. California. It grows in California.
Yeah, you can grow it here. Yeah.
Maybe
I don't know if it tastes good if I cooked it, if I made it, but we don't know. I tried in our uncle's house in Hawaii. They have pineapples growing in the backyard, and I could tell you from experience, the pineapples that grow in backyards in Hawaii aren't as good as the one that are cultivated in a dole.
Sure, you can come full circle, man. Go back to your farming roots.
I don't know much about it. I probably fail really miserably. I think I might just stick to bars.
Understood. I think this is probably better. All right, Kalamatsi, I know we talked a bunch about it, but anything else you want to reference here with regard to this?
Yeah, so again, I brought some fresh ones. Calamansi's a pretty super hyper seasonal fruit to get it fresh.
Yeah.
I think the window in San Francisco is about 2 months to get it fresh. So we sneakily use kumquats once in a while. It's about the same profile. So if you want to use it as a garnish, use a kumquat. That's a little secret. But outside of that, Calamansi, there's a couple of companies. Boron makes one, the purees, and you can buy those from your vendors.
You get those all. There's no limit on that. They just basically batch it, make a ton. You're good to go.
Yep. Yeah, I'd stay away from the drink ones you see in the stores because they have a shit ton of sugar added to it. And you want to use it pretty much fresh because you get that chalkiness and you want that tartness. If you're buying calamansi in a can or juice, there's 100% of the time it's like pasteurized and there's a bunch of sugar in it. So try and use it fresh as possible. Again, my big recommendation on calamansi using it is having that fatty. You need something fatty. When I say fatty, like 2-to-1 honey syrup or rich syrup, coconut milk or coconut cream helps balance it out. But you definitely don't want to just use calamansi by itself and like simple syrup. You need something really rich and fatty to balance out that really chalkiness from it.
Got it. And then this one we haven't talked about as much, but ube.
Yeah, ubes. I mean, I like to throw this one up here because I'm still figuring out ube myself. We've done a couple cocktails with ube. A lot of people are like, "Do you use fresh ube?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not nuts. Like, ube is literally like a sweet potato or a root. So for you to extract all that flavor and make it fresh, you have to take that picture of that ube, grind it down, cook it, add sweetness, strain it out, and the work behind that is insane. And one of my mantras that I live after is if someone can make it better than how I can make it, I'm gonna buy it from them. Which is why some syrups I buy syrups or some bitters I don't make my own bitters sometimes because someone else has perfected it and made it, and they're selling it. And I was like, if I can't do it any better, or I don't have the time to do it, someone else has done it for me. But again, ube is very using a lot of pastries. It's very trendy, and the hipsters love it because I see it at coffee shops all the time, like ube lattes, which is everywhere I go, there's ube lattes. Yeah, the hipsters have jumped right on that ube train, and they're riding it everywhere. So and the color is gorgeous, great, bright purple. We typically been used in the past using ube jam or ube jam, ube extract, a little bit of that as well, just to pull out the flavor instead of using something fresh. Ube jam is like a nice alternative. You just shake it up and gives all that flavor off.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good point. Of course, obviously, if you've got the time or you've got the manpower or whatever it is to manufacture a lot of this stuff on your own, of course, it's going to be, I'm sure, amazing, debatably better than what you can buy in the market. But I mean, you got to make those kind of trade-off equations in your head, right? Like, I think this comes up a lot in the liqueur space, and like, what do you really want to spend your time doing versus what have you?
Exactly. One of my favorite mottos from a chef that I used to work for was when I asked him if this was made in house, he's like, "Yes, it's made in house, somebody else's house." So I'm always like, people like to ask me, and I was like, "Do you make that in house?" And I'm like, "Yeah, in house." I mean, they don't have to lie. I'm not lying. It's made in someone else's house. Yeah, a house, not my house, someone else's house. Like, yeah, it's made in house. That's like saying cocktails, are they handcrafted? Well, I sure hope so. I hope I use my hands to make these fucking cocktails. So, yes.
Yeah, man, that's funny. We got a question here. Can you break down the Lucky Rice cocktail? Interested in the incorporation of forbidden rice.
Oh, wow. Great question. That's a far left field. The Lucky Rice was on our menu, 2019 menu. It was created and inspired by Francis Stansky, who's our bar manager over there. Francis is notoriously known as making a lot of cocktails, and I always or cocktails that have more than 6 steps. So these cocktails are always amazing and banging, but there's also the notorious 12 step, the 6 to 12 steps, or I call them touches or steps when you touch a bottle more than a couple of times. Lucky Rice was inspired by peaches and forbidden rice. So when we think about menus, revamping menus or menu inspiration, when we start R&D in cocktails, we always try to take something out of the ordinary that someone's not familiar with and something that someone's familiar with, and combine the two, because that's how we introduce flavors and cocktails to people. If you read a cocktail description and it's too far left field, you're going to lose somebody. So you always want to have something not familiar, like the forbidden rice component, and then something familiar, which was the peach puree or apricot puree that we used in there, and a little bit of bergamot, scotch, and all tied together with the forbidden rice syrup. So you essentially take rice, blend it up with all the spices, and then strain it out. I'll be honest, this cocktail was probably like our prep guy's worst nightmare. I definitely put the prep through a lot of difficult things, but this one was probably the hardest, because you're blending rice and you're sharing it, and then you have to strain it out, and you're sitting like through a sieve. You're like trying to strain out the juice and everything. But it was really cool. The forbidden rice gives off this really awesome savory element, and then you have something sweet like peaches and apricots. And one of my favorite pairings is that savory and sweet. I think back in the 90s, the favorite pairing was sweet heat. I think Dave Nepov coined that term of like sweet heat, where you put something sweet and you have something spicy together. Yeah. One of my favorite coined terms now is sweet and savory. So you get something savory and you balance it out with something sweet, and you have something that kind of rides that line of being savory and sweet at the same time, and the kind of flavor palette goes back and forth, which is really neat. But I hope that answers your question.
I think that answered the question, and I'll echo again. I mean, I think that's a great way to think about it in introducing new flavors, right? So again, I deal with some pretty esoteric stuff, and I've seen it happen time and time again where something is really interesting, really thoughtful, but it's like 4 unknown things in a cocktail and nobody will ever order it. It doesn't matter how awesome it is, right? It's like that connectivity of familiar to unfamiliar, and stepping people in and allowing them to, like, you have to get them to try it to get them on board, to be excited about it and want to learn more, right? So I think that's really good way of thinking when you're thinking about any kind of menu, whether it's food or drink or what have you. I think that's totally spot on.
Yeah, you're there. You have like a very clever punny cocktail name.
There you go. Yeah, or that
completely based off the name. So that also wins the situation. Your battle right there is just like you just have a menu filled with like a bunch of pop culture references and puns, and people are like, "This bar is amazing because of the puns." And you're like, right, sure.
This guy playing the hits, tricking them out. Yeah. Awesome, man. Very cool. Anything else you want to talk in terms of ingredients?
No, I mean those are kind of like the predominant ones I use. That's kind of close to my heart and my heritage. But again, it's just like, I just reiterate to everyone out there, is something I'd love to see is more culture and heritage in the cocktails. I think it's something that will be strong. I think there's a lot of culture and a lot of people and a lot of great bartenders out there that aren't getting the attention that they deserve or they should be having because of their flavors or the markets that they're in. And I'd love to see more culture being pushed forward in the cocktails. So if you have them out there, shoot them to me. Tell me where you're at. I will get in the car and drive there.
Yeah,
I just drove 9 hours all the way up to Seattle and had an awesome time up in Seattle.
Yeah, great time. Yeah, right on. Well, actually, tell us a little bit about how can people help support. Obviously, you've been going through it, with the fire and all that, and you've been hustling around doing pop-ups and everything, which has been really cool to see. And as I've mentioned to you before, totally admire your kind of stick-to-itness. As a fellow entrepreneur, I think it's inspiring. But how can people help support you guys from afar? How can we direct that energy?
Yeah, I mean, I think the support that we get in everyone's words of encouragement and the support of buying gift certificates. And I think someone had started a GoFundMe page back in February, which is very unexpected. I don't like to ask for anything. So it was very nice and generous. I think the only way to support us is just is once we reopen is to come visit our bar and support the team. We're in a very fortunate situation that we, because of the fire and because of the pandemic and these really weird things going on in the situations, that we're in a fairly good place. We're planning on moving PCH from that location to another location, which is very close, that we'll probably announce in the next week and stuff.
Cool.
But the support that you guys get and everyone gives to us is overwhelming, and it's always been too much to say thank you to everybody. So again, I just iterate, the support you can do is just continue supporting us, coming to the bar when it's there, and coming to the pop-ups and the takeovers that we have.
Awesome, man. Well, I think that's easy enough. I know everybody really enjoys that, but look forward to the announcement. Send it my way as well. We'll share it out to the Tiki alumni crew and all that, so they know about it. But I'm sure it'll be awesome. I'll give a little analogy from my experience with you. I just remember when you took over that space and you were not very well funded, and you were like, hey, I'm just going to do it gradually. And like, I've not seen that really work very often, where, somebody builds it up and sticks to it. And it was really impressive to see it as somebody just, in town every 6-8 months, whatever it may be, right? Kind of see it moving along. So I just thought that was super rad that you guys were able to do that. I'm sure if anybody can pick it up, move it, and make it dope, it's you guys as well.
Yeah, I hope we have. A lot of that's just great support cast, great team, great cheerleaders, and a lot of great people around me. It's definitely not a one-man show. Everything that I've been able to accomplish isn't a one-man show. It's been all about the people around me, the people that support me.
For sure, man. Cool. Well, we'll bring you back in a moment. We're gonna bang out our 5 questions here. We'll come back to you just to say goodbye. Thank you very much. Great having you.
Thanks, Pete.
What's up? You're back. What do you know about Alamansi?
Not a lot.
Not a lot. Now you know more.
I definitely know more now. But what's great, listening to Kevin talk about his heritage and utilizing those flavors. I recently was just exposed to Filipino cuisine through a friend of mine. Her family comes from the Philippines, and she exposed me to Filipino breakfast and having the ube, like ice cream and desserts, and my God, all those flavors are so goddamn great.
Right on. Awesome. All right, 5 questions. Describe Wildwood.
Blast from the past.
Yeah, that's good.
That's
pretty much nails it.
That's the best way that I could, like, whenever I've told people about Wildwood, I just say, like, imagine getting in the time machine and heading back to the 60s and 70s. It's
right.
Such an interesting place.
Speaking of weirdest Wildwood experience, weirdest.
Oh, you're probably not gonna like hearing this.
Me or Steva? Who's gonna like it less?
At 4 a.m. with about 5 other people, which I think it was the next day when we went on the boat. And we're hearing about the sharks and everything. That's 4 a.m. seems to be their active feeding time.
Nice.
That was definitely my weirdest Wildwood moment.
That would have been a first if we had shark attacks going on in the middle of the night. Maybe we need to put that in the waiver.
No one's gonna get eaten by a shark.
Put it in the waiver.
Oh.
I think there was like an old episode of Rob and Big where Rob Dyrdek, he's like, man, I just want to be nicknamed Shark Attack. So he like gets in the metal suit and gets bit by sharks, and it'd be really terrible if somebody walks away from Tiki by the sea.
That show is pretty entertaining. That show is pretty good. All right. Favorite meal not made by my dad. Favorite meal.
Ooh. Not made by your dad.
Correct. Yeah, everybody uses that, so I try and switch it up.
God, I mean, that was such a highlight that like that.
So you're overriding it.
Like that's the standout. That's the end all be all of the Tiki dining experience.
There you go. All right, I'll have to give it to him. I'm sure I'll like to hear that. The end all be all. There we go.
Indeed, yes.
Favorite memory overall from Tiki by the Sea.
I think probably like hanging in the pool, doing the photos in the pool. That was probably that was probably up there for me. I don't know. There's a lot of really great memories. Obviously the boardwalk day, that was a bummer because of the weather. But the 3D golf was like I didn't think I was going to have that much fun. But
what a pivot! Steven nailed it on that one.
Yeah, that was great.
Awesome. All right, tell us what's going on in Chicago.
Man, things are seemingly getting back to pretty normal now. We're definitely, I would say, one of the cities that really kind of handled the pandemic a lot more strictly than elsewhere around the U.S. Yeah. So now that things have like fully reopened, it's kind of bizarre to see people out and about and behaving like it never even occurred. But it's great though. I've been making jokes. I've been living here. It'll be 3 years in September. That I haven't really had the opportunity to fully experience the Chicago summer. Because the first year that I was here, I was working so goddamn much that I couldn't go do all the street festivals or go to the beach or, just experience like all the different like musical things that happen. So those things are starting to come back. And I actually, I just moved to a portion of the city that's, I'm a 5-minute walk from the beach.
Nice.
Which is super cool. My roommate and I, we've already been joking about like, all right, so how do we blend up daiquiris and still keep them really great and bring them to the beach with us? But like I think about Tiki, sitting through the seminars of blended cocktails and all the points that were gained from that, and I'm like, well, if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it really well.
That's awesome. I'll have to send you some drifter cans too to enjoy in your beachside experience over there.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
they're delicious.
I was thrilled to see that you guys named the company Drifter Spirits. I was like, well, this is just lovely because I'm working at the Drifter.
Dude, that was so random. Super random. Awesome, man. Well, here I got to throw up this photo of you.
Yes,
which is fantastic. Yeah, so, good one.
I was going through all the photos from our session, and I like all the pictures that were me in it. It was just like I'm like in the very back of like a big group photo, and I just look like a so this photo of Diedrich Rodriguez and I that comes from when I was still working in Denver at BNGC, a little speakeasy in the Cherry Creek neighborhood. And he would come through from time to time. We'd do up little Agua Amberana daiquiris and hang out and have a great time. I miss getting to see Derek. He was a great dude, and I probably really wouldn't have gotten to know him as well if we didn't go to Tiki together. So great opportunity to meet a great person.
Awesome. Next up, we got Brother Cleve on July 27th doing the Tiki soundtrack. We'll see how sober he is for this session. One of the best memories is Cleve spending 45 minutes trying to set up his equipment to play for like 6 minutes before he got shut down. Was definitely a highlight of Tiki for me. I mean, that was high comedy. Let's bring Kevin back. Guys, it's been awesome hanging out with you. Hope to see you both in your respective cities at one point in the not too distant future as we're starting to travel more. But yeah, keep us posted on your movements, Kevin. Excited for
sure.
PCH 2.0 and where all that's going.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Pete.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.